Hi everyone and welcome back. Now the question is, so what is actually causing mental and emotional imbalance? Now I found that if we follow just the science, then the same conclusion is arrived at every time. In order to keep the videos relatively short and to keep it very simple so even I can follow it, we'll start with the first half of this story. Now, contrary to what most people believe, there appears to be no one common catastrophic event that causes all mental and emotional imbalance. Now, references to which we can find in any doctor's office, media reports, or even Google, such as any traumatic events, childhood abuse, social isolation or loneliness, long-term poverty and debt, unhealthy relationships, natural disasters, death of someone special, and any long-term form of stress, disease, or poor physical health. The reality is there are a multitude of different events or stress effects which, if allowed to continue unchallenged, can most definitely eventually tip any one of us into a mental and emotional imbalance. Now, as it turns out, there are 10 separate sciences that I have discovered so far involved with the cause and outcomes of mental and emotional imbalance. That's interesting to know. I also discovered that for whatever reason, very few doctors and therapists are aware of this. And very few are aware that there is an effective science-based approach to reversing many mental and emotional balance issues. Now, the science repeatedly says three revealing things. Number one, each of us reacts differently to every different stress event that any human can experience throughout their life. What triggers one individual won't necessarily trigger another, which also means we have different coping abilities. Nature has made it that way as a survival trait for the whole group. Now, number two, incredibly, the result of positive or negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions changes parts inside the body cells, including in our brain, and those parts are called dendrites and telomeres, and it's been known about for about 50, 60 years. It is these parts inside the cells, when they reflect a positive outlook, make us see the world in a positive setting, or vice versa. Now, it turns out that these dendrites and telomeres, which I point out can be photographed, are our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Now, who would have ever known that? Certainly not me. And number three, it turns out the underlying cause in virtually every case of imbalance is a product of our ancient human stress response, which means stress in our life coming from anywhere. If we just consider those three facts, it means with the exception of between 1 and 2%, which is the genetic influence, usually a lack of specific genes or damaged or faulty genes, most mental health issues or imbalances are recoverable. Now, who has ever told you that before? I've never heard it before. Again, why? Because all humans, along with all other creatures, are genetically programmed to heal and recover, which means to move back to a balanced state. It is a natural survival trait. That's why it is commonly called mental and or emotional balance, and it's called a progressive disease or disorder. Remember, we said progressive because if we do this, it gets worse. And if we stop doing this and do that instead, it naturally and gradually swings back to a healthy balance. That's nature. So let's do a quick and simple summary of our earlier videos explaining how our stress response is the underlying cause of our mental and emotional balance or imbalance. Quick and simple, I say, is the key for most of us, as the full explanation is very detailed, convoluted, and requires a knowledge base at many different levels that I believe only a handful of experienced scientists can fully understand. And that knowledge would take years to gain. Meanwhile, most of us are simply just too busy getting on with our daily life. And that's why I have simplified the science we are learning about, so at the least we can all understand it. And that includes me. Now, this is the same thing happening for every human, and it is all happening at a subconscious level, so we don't even know it's happening. And it all happens at virtually the same time, right throughout the body. Now, number one, a stressful event is classed as a form of threat to our survival by our ancient reptilian brain. Remember that one? Little brain, a real brain the size of a pea at the base of our skull, which automatically and in 30 millionths of a second, which is virtually instantaneous, triggers our stress response throughout our body into action. Now, number two, immediately the amygdala part of our brain searches through the stored records of all historic traumatic events, experiences, feelings, and emotions which might relate to the cause of this recent triggering. Isn't that crazy? And it does this in order to figure out what the cause of the sense of threat might be, so we can escape it. Number three, at the same time, the sympathetic nervous system activates every organ and cell in our body, ramping it up, ready for an explosive fight or flight. And number four, at the same time, the stress hormones, in particular adrenaline and cortisol, flood through every cell, setting them up ready for the fight or flight explosion. Number five, at the same time, the presence of adrenaline is shutting down the common sense logic part of our brain because its response is actually too slow in a potential life and death situation. Number six, at the same time, the amygdala is running wild, coming up with anything that may fit the cause of the stress response being activated. Right now, living with our thoughts, feelings, and emotions that have been highly stimulated by the amygdala's activity and without the calming influence of our logical common sense part of the brain can feel extremely overwhelming, to say the least. But it's all happening for logical and well-studied reasons. Number seven, at the same time, our nervous system is being rapidly sensitized by the presence of those adrenal waves flooding through. We simply cannot calm down. Number eight, at the same time, the stress response always triggers the inflammation reaction to some degree, which involves the body producing some very toxic chemicals throughout, which is immediately followed by an automatic response from our immune system, which also produces more of these toxic chemicals. And with the help of a huge wave of adrenaline, the stress response explosion happens, whether we like it or not. So, if we have any mental health issues going on, then this is what is happening inside our body where nobody can see. Now, the point is this. There is a reason, a logical, well-studied reason. And in the moment, we feel extremely overwhelmed, fear or panic or anger and frustration. And we physically or verbally lash out or run for our life or fight to the end or freeze and tremble in a state of anxiety or fear. Our thinking mind has been turned off. Now, in the moment, there is no sense of creative, happy, optimistic, joyful, hopeful, upbeat, and positive. Why? Because all of the necessary hormones required to feel these emotions have all been shut down as a normal part of the automatic stress response. That's right, it's automatic and it's all been shut down. Hormones like serotonin, the happy hormone, and oxytocin, the affection and positive relationship hormone, and GABA, it's an interesting one, which is responsible for the calming of the mind, have all been shut down by the stress response because we can't be in a survival mode and happy at the same time. That would take our attention away from finding or escaping from the impending danger, whatever it is. So do you get just how ancient and primitive this process is? And it's a big, very necessary part of what makes us humans. Okay, nice job everyone. Now we'll leave it there and pick up on the second half of what's actually causing our mental and emotional imbalance in the next video. All right, we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.